I kind of want to talk about one or two things I've gotten to read here because oh boy, they're doozies. So me and Sid, well, here I don't know. Here, let me just start from the beginning. So I had seen this the cover of a comic, like an actual comic, not necessarily manga. I mean, manga's comics, but you know what I mean, like an actual American comic called Circuit Breaker. And I had seen somebody post the front cover of the first issue, and I noticed that, the main character is posed like Astro Boy. Oh, that's kind of interesting. And then I have a Comixology account, so I saw that it was a new release actually, being sold for I think $2.99 or something. And so, like, the cover art I didn't think looked very appealing. Like my first problem with it is that because you have all these like cloud trails leading behind the main female lead, and I'm just gonna say it looks like fart gas. I'm sorry, guys. It looks gross. Like, and that kind of turned me off a bit. So I was like, And like, I mean, just the art overall, I could tell is kind of like a very like a very westernized anime art style. You know, the kind of art style you would see in like How to Draw Anime book or something.
It's very stylized. In a way, it reminds me of when Frank Miller tried to draw kind of the anime style with the Dark Knight.
Oh my god!
Like Dark Knight Returns sequel books. I forget which one it was, but I remember reading it. It was weird and I don't know. But Frank Miller is a whole other discussion. We're a manga podcast, so
yeah. So anyway, I picked up the first issue of Circuit Breaker on Comixology, and I will not be as crude as I was on Twitter because, you know, this podcast kind of sort of represents all comic, and I don't want to make all comics sound bad or anything, but I'll just be nice and say that I honestly regret buying it. I did not like it.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm glad I didn't buy it and I could mooch off your Comixology account.
yeah, I wasn't gonna, like, I feel bad because here's the thing, like, I was tweeting a storm up about it. Like, I think maybe, I don't know, somehow maybe we can leave some, well, maybe, I don't know. If here, you want to follow me on Twitter and look for my tweets, you know, just search, go to Twitter and search my handle plus Circuit Breaker, and I'm sure you'll find my tweets, because apparently not a lot of other people were tweeting about it. Like, so few people were tweeting about this that the writer and artist for Circuit Breaker started following me for some reason, and started retweeting some of my stuff, and I was like, why? I'm kind of not saying some very nice things about your stuff, but I guess bad publicity is still publicity, so there you go. Like, I don't really know what to say about it other than, like, it's very, very heavily influenced by Osamu Tezuka. And
specifically Astro Boy.
Yeah, specifically.
There are clear homages to Astro Boy, not just in the themes of like the ethics of like robots and like whether the robots and or like the humanity of robots and like the morality of using them as tools, or the whether or like treating them as real people. Like these are all things like developed and explored in Astro Boy. Like these are all themes that are thoroughly covered in Astro Boy and are central themes of Astro Boy. So, in fact, the main character herself is basically kind of like Astro Boy inspired in terms of like her background as like a robot that looks like humans, struggling with, you know, being the bridge between like humanity and robots and all that stuff. And there's also like pretty obvious Tezuka character cameos. Like in the second page, we see Professor Ochanomizu on Astro Boy on a subway train. So,
yeah.
You know, this comic really heavily takes ideas and inspiration from Astro Boy, but the problem is that the execution of these ideas isn't very thoughtful or thought-provoking. Like none of the characters on either side of the argument come off looking likable or sympathetic in any way.
No.
The murderous robots are murderous robots, and they do not, and there is no sympathy in their actions and in their killing spree. The main heroine is very lackluster. She doesn't really have much personality going for her. In general, like, it's very confusing about where she stands and what she actually wants to do with her, like, what she wants to, like, what her role in the story really is, because halfway into the comic, she disappears and we focus on the villains and supporting characters. Like my ramble, this comic isn't very structured. It doesn't really focus on any one character very well and develop them to the point that we kind of understand them well.
Yeah,
I think the only character that is somewhat whose characterization is somewhat agreeable is this one, like, bureau inspector guy, Karo Tozin,
who looks like it looks like the artist got tired of drawing Tezuka style characters and tried to go for Hanna-Barbera, but couldn't, like, completely get out of that Tezuka art style. So he looks like this weird cross between a Tezuka character and a Hanna-Barbera character.
Well, he sort of looks kind of like another classic manga art style. Like, in a way, the thick eyebrows in particular sort of remind me of Kochikame. It's like Kochikame's mangaka's art style, but
you know what? Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that's another thing. The reason why his characterization works at least somewhat better is that he's at least trying to be diplomatic. Like, the way he behaves is inconsistent, because the way he reacts to the robot girl is like he's very, like, aggressive towards her and suspicious of her, but he's also is very supportive of robot rights, and he tries to persuade, like, this one killer robot from, like, going on a rampage, and, like, he sympathizes with their struggle and, like, believes they should be treated as people. Like, he at least has the makings of a more interesting, fully fleshed out, multidimensional character, but it's just that the writing is so inconsistent that it's even he doesn't work, and he's probably the best character in this comic.
The writing, and we should keep in mind that, or I guess let everybody know that this is like issue 1 out of like a 4 or 5 issue miniseries, I guess. But I think I can safely say that I'm not going to be reading any more of this. Like, I feel like I don't know. I feel like that this comic, like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's too dependent on, like, other works, like Osamu Tezuka's Astro Boy. Like, I could tell, like, I feel like the writer wanted to, like, pay homage to Tezuka, because I think you could tell that that whoever wrote this had great respect for Tezuka and his works, but, like, it doesn't feel like an homage so much as it just feels like a copy and paste of of these particular themes that were tackled in Astro Boy.
Yeah, if you want to see these themes done better, like, specifically read the Astro Boy storyline, Once Upon a Time Astro Boy Tales. Like, those volumes 6 through 8 of Astro Boy. Like, that's probably my favorite story arc of Astro Boy, and one of my all-time favorite story arcs in manga. And it tackles, like, all the themes that Circuit Breaker is trying to kind of tackle in this first issue, but a million times more successfully.
Also, read Pluto. I think Pluto isn't a Tezuka work, but it's basically based off another. It's
based on the Greatest Robot on Earth storyline,
which is essentially just another Astro Boy story arc, which is also drawn by Naoki Urasawa. Mm-hmm. So that's like the one Urasawa work I've actually gotten to finish, and honestly, like, I think even Pluto, especially Pluto, does a better job of these kind of themes, or presenting these kind of themes, rather.
Yes. What I will say is that, so basically, it seems that looking up the writer's other work, I've trying to see what he's done before. And it seems that in general, the writer Kevin McCarthy doesn't have isn't like the best writer, around. Like a lot of his books have been criticized for their writing, and he hasn't really there have been a lot of negative criticisms of his previous series like Epoch and Mystery in Space and Street Magic. So maybe on that front, it's not so much of a surprise that this book isn't written the best. I will say though that the art, in terms of the artwork, it's clearly a stylistic choice by the work of the artist. Because the artist Kyle Baker is actually a well-renowned and respected artist in the industry. He has 8 Eisner Awards, 5 Harvey Awards, 5 Glyph Comics Awards. He's a talented artist, and he's been in the industry for many, many years. So, his art style in this comic is definitely a stylistic choice. They decided on making the art like this. It could have probably been looked so I mean they intentionally went for this kind of I don't know what to say. It looks like kind of spray paint webcomic-y art style. Very
No, I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah, so in terms of the aesthetics, that's an intentional choice. It isn't because the artist is a bad artist, but he made the decision for the art to look this way. Though I do have to say that there are weird there is some weird framing and continuity problems with this artwork that makes the action scenes in particular incredibly confusing.
Yeah, there was a I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, there was a part where essentially, because at first the main character and her friend, I guess, are on the train going somewhere. And then there's this noxious gas released on the train, and then they jump out of the train and somehow land in the way of this killer robot, and I was incredibly confused as to how the transition of that worked.
Yes, because for one thing, they flipped the the perspective of the character. There's a general rule when you're framing shots that you follow this rule of kind of 180 degrees. You don't switch to a shot that's more than 180 degrees of where your character is at. But here, when during the sequence, we first see the character and she's facing towards the left of the left. But when we see her, when we transition to the next panel, we're suddenly behind her and she's facing right, and that is incredibly disorienting, and that adds to the confusion. But then what also adds to the confusion is that, in this panel, apparently what's happening is that she's kicking the robot outside a window, but just the way her leg is moving, it's, for some reason, it's behind the heads of not only her blue-haired friend, but this random man on the subway. It's hard to understand what her leg is doing. Is it moving under these people and kicking him out the window this way? The spacing between the character's leg and her body, and then the presence of the supporting characters in between her, and then the entire transition of this whole sequence is incredibly hard to follow and confusing. And there's definitely problems in terms of some characters' anatomy at parts. Characters go off model all the time in this comic.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm just kind of rambling on, but what I'm trying to say is that there are clear fundamental principles that every storyboarder or comic artist kind of should know that about how you transition between shots, and how you frame action sequences, and like how like people's bodies move. And there are a lot of comics with bad anatomy and like have problems like this, but never one that that's this. I've never read one that is this hard to follow, and when the art style it's just generally so simple. Like it's very bizarre to me, especially considering that the artist has such a great reputation and has so many awards that he would like. I feel like it had to have been an intentional choice from him to like draw the comic this way. So I don't know.
But just one real quick thing, and then we'll move on. I also hate all the references. Like, I hate every reference in this because it feels very like, oh hey, do you like anime? Well, here's all the things you'll recognize. Like look at all these names and references to other anime and manga you might like.
Yeah,
like you know what I mean.
There's just random Japanese words thrown in,
and I can't
generic anime concepts. They reference Super Sentai ones. So
yeah, they do. I was like, what?
That's odd because why would you even bother?
And
American readers
and the little robot who like releases the gas at first. He's like a service robot, and he's offering all these different things, and one of the things he says he offers is something called Norimaki Arare, which, for those of you who don't know,
but see that's a whole different, because the character of Arale Norimaki is like based on like a cracker.
I know that, but I would bet any kind of money that wasn't a reference to the food.
Okay, maybe because like Robot Girl, so
yeah, exactly. Like you know that wasn't a reference to the food. Like that was Toriyama's intention with the character of Arale, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't the intention of making that reference here.
Yeah, more than likely than not.
But yeah, so I would not recommend this comic. Like, I didn't like it whatsoever. I just didn't think it was good, and I was kind of disappointed.
Yeah, the problem with comics that try to, like, really base themselves in, like, manga, like, ideas and tropes and stuff, like, the problem is they often just get a little too overindulgent.
Yeah, I
with
hate
the
that
concepts
so much.
without understanding what really makes these kind of series work, and it's not that, and people don't really care. I mean, people don't care about the novelty of all these, like, Japanese terms or, like, these weird, or, like, references or anything. What really attracts people to anime and manga in the long run are, like, the kinds of stories they tell, and, like, how different they tend to be from mainstream superhero comics. Mm-hmm. And what the problem with this is that it's trying to specifically make its own version of Astro Boy, but it's getting muddled and buried under all these unnecessary things that are distracting from the themes and the characters, like all these references and like and stylistic choices, and basically making every character like some kind of manga or like trope or some kind of like archetype relating to manga or Osamu-Tezuka manga.
It feels super manufactured.
I don't know if it doesn't feel manufactured from like a company like this is like
but
editorial, but this feels like the writer put in all these things in an attempt to, because he thought they would be like fun and he wanted to pay homage to this stuff, but what he's really doing is that he's undermining like the focus of his story, and as a result it's confusing to follow and the reader just cannot get invested in what's going on. Even though this was only like a 20 or so page comic, I took a very long time to read it, and
me too.
And it was incredibly painful for me to read it because I simply just could not follow what was going on, and I could not care about the characters.
Oh, me neither.
It's
like
just
it took me a long time to read because I was live tweeting it. Like, God, I was tweeting all the speech bubbles, all the things I hated about it. I didn't like it. It just wasn't good.
hmm there are plenty of good comics that draw inspiration from manga, but what they do is that they take what inspired them in manga series and they execute them in their own personal way that's like true to the artist. Here, the writer is trying too hard to take ideas from Osamu Tezuka and like regurgitate them,
Yep.
but in a quirky, quote unquote, quirky way.
Good, yeah.
So it's not. So it doesn't feel like this artist has an original vision for the story, and just feels that he's sort of just trying to mimic Astro Boy, even though I'm sure he's really just trying to pay homage to it. But it's just not successful in what it's trying to do.
Nope.